The challenge of open-mindedness. In the pursuit to grow your spiritual understanding, to come to a deeper understanding of the truth, open-mindedness is one quality that you have or you have to develop. And to say that it is challenging to have an open mind and to keep it open is based on a few different aspects of our current view of the world and our the way the mind works. And I want to get into these qualities of our mind that make it usually difficult to keep a mindset that is receptive to new ideas, to exploring different ideas, to really be able to actually observe what we experience without putting too much of our own conceptual understanding on top of it and immediately categorizing everything we experience into some sort of category of good or bad, of how it relates to us personally. And so this open-mindedness is really a challenge to stay with a state of not knowing, with a state of being able to learn from observation. And the first thing that is so challenging about open-mindedness is that usually our mind is interpreting everything we perceive and putting a concept on it before we become actually conscious of it. So this perception we think we have of the world is only partly what it is. It is to a large degree actually defined by our concepts. What does that mean? If you take any object, for example, and you look at it, you will be able, or you should be able, to discover after some time that it is not only the raw perception that you are seeing, but that you are immediately and very self-evidently, or very as a process that you are not aware of, that's ongoing, you are aware of your concepts. So you think about this object largely as how it is relating to yourself and how it is presented to you by your conceptual understanding of it. For example, if you look at your hand and you may think, okay, this is made up of cells, this has something we call blood running through it, it has skin, it is connected to what I think is my body, it is my hand. And so immediately when you see your hand, this is like the conceptual understanding that is already present and really fused in with that perception that you have. And then on an even more subtle level, you don't actually see what is there. You have something, your hand has many different shades of colors. So you really have to look carefully to notice these different colors, because usually you think, oh, it's just a hand. I know what my hand is. I've seen it in many different forms or under many different lightings. And so usually everything we perceive is so common to us when we have grown up that we don't really look at it anymore. And this is something that artists have to become really good at. They have to see past their concepts, and in order to be able to draw something realistically, they have to see what is actually there. Because when you look at your hand, you may have a certain color in mind that your hand has, but usually it's like incredible how many different colors objects have. They like your hand, for example, what I see right now, it's red, it's yellow, it's dark, it's orange. And so to really see past all of these concepts is the challenge of staying open-minded. And with something like objects, it's simple enough to see, to distinguish your conceptual understanding of it and your raw immediate perception. But where this is actually becoming more relevant and even more interesting and also more complicated is when you are interacting with other people and you're talking about certain subjects and you have to respond rather quickly. You have somebody asks you something and you're talking about a subject. In those kinds of situations, it becomes very, very difficult to not get lost in the concepts of it and immediately always interpret what the other person is saying and then rejecting parts of it and accepting other parts of it based on your own personal background or based on your personal understanding. Because in one way, that's not a bad thing. That's how we understand the world, how we are able to interact at all, to understand other people. But we miss this point where on the one side it's reality, what is based in unchangeable facts, and then the much larger part where it's actually our interpretation of it. That's one thing that makes open-mindedness so challenging in these situations, that we usually don't see it as that, as our interpretations that we are usually talking about. And so this leads to a lot of rejection very quickly. Everything we perceive that doesn't fit our worldview, we see as not true, because how we explain the world to ourselves, we would like to think that this is true. But the thing to make open-mindedness really a deep-rooted understanding or really have a deep grasp of it is why it's so necessary, is to see that every explanation, every worldview, no matter who is having it, can never be the absolute truth. It just cannot. And why is that? The reason for that is when we are trying to explain the whole, when we are trying to get to the root of any subject, then we are always at some point have to make some assumptions. We have to come from a place of not knowing and jump to some conclusion that is not based in actual reality. And so even though it's very helpful to have all these models to explain relations between different things in the world, I mean, all the technology we have is all based on this conceptual understanding of how things on a very deep level interact with one another. But still, at some point, there has to be some generalization, some vague aspect that we don't really know about. So if this is the case even with science, then it is even more so the case with the subjects we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And really try to get a feeling for that, where the distinction lies between what is actually true, what is actually what you really know about, and what is interpretation. And to be able to have this distinction always present in the mind is really to deeply grasp that there is no absolute truth in any conceptual understanding. The only real truth comes from a realization when there is no more separation between subject and object, relation between you and the world. When this illusory differentiation collapses, then you also realize that all the concepts are just part of the whole and can never really grasp the truth of what is going on. To conclude this, I will quickly check my notes to see that I don't have missed any major points. one thing that I've also written down is when you go down that road to clearly distinguish between concept and reality, at one point you will realize that existence itself, how you experience it, only comes into existence through the conceptualization of it. That actually you, who you think you are, is a concept, that you are not existing without this ability to build up a whole system of concepts that are relating to other concepts. And at the top of that, you could say that is the feeling of you as a separate individual being, which is illusory, but without that, this reality, this experience of separateness couldn't even exist. So the way you experience the world right now is a combination of raw, immediate experience and, to a much larger part, conceptualization of it, interpretation of it. Yeah, I guess these were my insights so far into the subject of why it's important to keep an open mind. And I hope you liked it. Please let me know your thoughts on it. I really like to read those comments. And I would say with that, see you in the next video. Goodbye.